This webinar is brought to you by MatchPal, the only specialty-specific residency advising platform. We help you match your dream specialty by providing one-on-one personalized guidance from expert resident advisors. Schedule your free consultation at matchpalmedical.com.
Welcome, everyone. My name is Daniel. I'm an IR resident in New York City and part of the MatchPal leadership team. With me, I have some amazing friends and colleagues that are also part of our residency advising team, and just really excited and enthusiastic to share with you some tips and insights as they pertain to away rotations. We know that it's like a really critical time right now. People are starting to think about their specialties, where they're going to be applying for aways. The process can be often very daunting and confusing, and so we're hoping today we add some clarity to that and give you guys some pearls to not only how to navigate the application itself, but also the rotation whenever you get to that point. So, first, let's just go around and introduce some of the amazing people that volunteered their time tonight to help spread some knowledge. So, we'll go start off with Ife. You want to give us an introduction?
Yeah. Can you hear me okay? All right. So my name is Ife. I'm a general surgery resident, second year at Hopkins. I think it's a really, really, really cool experience for me personally to mentor and share tips. I currently sit in some of these meetings that decides who comes in and who interviews. I'm also very recently involved in the process. And, one of the most important things after you've gotten your step scores, step 1, step 2, is actually navigating this very complex system that's very, very hard to follow. So, it's been really nice working with Ian, David, and providing very regimented tips that helps with achieving and succeeding throughout this process. And really, it's just more about being very wise with every step of your decision and knowing when to pull the right move. So it's more of like a coaching strategy, and I think away rotations is just such a crucial component. Sometimes, the discussion is, should you even do a away rotation? There's so many thoughts that come into it. For me specifically, as a general surgeon, my specific tips apply to different students based on their background and where they currently are. But everyone, I think, has very a wide scope of things to learn from today, and I think we'll have a great experience all around.
Awesome. Thank you, man. Dave, you want to introduce yourself?
Hey, I'm David, PM&R at Jefferson, and I'm just gonna hit on the same points that Ife said. I'm a huge fan of away rotations, and that's why I'm here today. I'm a real big believer in them and what can come out of them, and I'm hoping to share some of my experiences and impart some wisdom with you guys today. And thank you for being here.
Awesome. And we got Ian.
Hey everyone, I'm Ian. I'm going into diagnostic radiology at Medical College of Wisconsin. I personally, for my specific situation, did not do an away rotation, but now, evaluating applicants for residency and doing residency interviews, see a lot of applicants who are doing away rotations for my specialty. And so, can also give some insight into how people talk about their experiences on away rotations and how can they succeed on away rotations, seeing people who come and rotate with us.
Awesome. Yeah. And I think just to add some other perspective, we have 2 people on this panel that are DOs and 2 people that are MDs. So we're trying to make this, relatable to you guys, because I know you guys are all coming from different backgrounds. And I also think we have 2 people that matched into places that they rotated at as well. Although, Ife, did you rotate at Hopkins or no? I think you're muted.
No, I actually did not. I rotated a different program, but
Nice.
It influenced my decision heavily.
Of course. All right. Yeah. So I was right. So we have 2 people that did, match at places where they did rotate at, and 2 people that, that matched at places where they didn't rotate at. So it's also really helpful to know about. So let's get into the meeting agenda. So we're going to talk about the actual application, who should be doing the aways, when and how to apply. We'll get into the nitty gritties of the actual application process itself. And then we'll talk about tips for succeeding on the away, and then how to convert the experience into kind of the real currency of the away rotation, which really is matching, right? So we'll talk about all that. We'll give you guys opportunity to ask questions at the end as well. So VSLO is this kind of acronym that you probably are going to hear thrown around a ton as you're approaching your third year and in your third year. It stands for Visiting Student Learning Opportunities. It used to be called VSAS, GHLO. It had all these weird acronyms and names. All you need to know about is that all of them refer to the same thing, and that same thing is the application platform that you use to apply as a visiting student to an institution that is not your home program. So the same way that ERAS is the application platform for residency, VSLO is the application platform that you're going to use for away rotations. And kind of ties this in, like who should do this away rotation at another institution? The kind of the answer is pretty varied. I think what's in bold here is probably the thing that I want everyone to take home is that, like, if you go to a medical school that doesn't have a home program within your specialty that can provide you with research opportunities, networking opportunities, exposure to the field in general, you should probably at least consider doing an away rotation. Some fields more than others really, really value away rotations. I can speak from my experience in interventional radiology. Almost everybody does at least one, if not more, away rotations. I personally did 3. I ended up matching at one of those places. And I think other fields value them to different extents. I actually love to hear the perspective. Maybe David, what do you think about for PM&R? Do you see a lot of students doing aways? What's like the consensus? What would you say?
Yeah, I saw a lot of students doing away rotations, and then when the match happened, I saw them actually match at programs that they did their away at. I obviously didn't know their rank list or what they put, but I can assume that their experiences with their away rotations helped guide where they wanted to match.
Absolutely. And maybe Ife, you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, some general surgery applicants actually don't necessarily go through the away rotation route. Obviously, if you want to apply somewhere very competitive, then you probably have to start thinking about what your letter writers will be, what your research looks like, and those can influence whether or not you should. It's very hard to impress surgeons, right? So it puts a lot of more emphasis on how ready you should be. So that's why most people sometimes say, if you look good on paper, you might not want to, but if you really want to go for the more competitive fields, then get your letters, get some research from these higher institutions.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think another thing that's really important for the away rotation is, if you really want to go to a specific program, let's say you go to medical school that isn't in your hometown, you really want to return to your hometown, there's only one residency program that's offering that specialty. That's a phenomenal way to network and show face to a place that might not otherwise consider you. Another kind of key thing is that we were actually discussing earlier is that the away rotation is one of the last times in your life that you're really able to get a learning opportunity in another institution, whether you match there or not. And I think that's actually really valuable. And to this day, I reflect a lot about the different procedures and personalities and, workflows that I encountered at the different places that I rotated at, because it kind of shapes how you think about your specialty, practice patterns, and, what your future job might want to look like. So I think those are actually really important things to keep in mind as well. This is a busy slide. I don't want to take too much time upon it. You guys could take screenshots if you want, but basically, the kind of the crux of it is this, is that, the away rotation application process is going to heavily involve your medical school. They need to kind of approve your application. They need to submit documents on your behalf that you actually don't have access to. So it's really important that you're kind of in constant communication with whoever the representative is from your school to make sure that they're putting in things in on time and submitting your stuff on time, because timing is everything. You want to be the first person, if possible. You want to submit on the first day for each respective program. This is what the interface looks like. I don't know how many of you have actually been able to log into VSLO yet or not, but basically this is the home screen. And we wanted to kind of talk about some of this stuff because some of it can be confusing. I think the first and most important thing is everybody should be getting a professional headshot in, as soon as possible, getting your basic info, that stuff that it takes 45 seconds to there, you know what I mean? You're not you don't have to hassle anyone for it. Where you live, hopefully, your biographic info, put it in, get it done, and leave the harder stuff for later. And I think here I actually would love to hear a little bit about here I wanted to talk to you guys about how to pick a program, how many programs to apply to, and like how many, ways to even consider doing. And I think, I'll start off by sharing a little bit about my experience. When I was kind of going for this, I was applying interventional radiology and diagnostic radiology. So I was technically a dual applicant. I applied to both diagnostic and interventional away rotations, but I knew in my head I wanted to do IR, and like I really wanted to do the IR away rotations way more. So to me, the diagnostic was a little bit of a secondary focus. And my goal was to do at least 3 if possible, because I was coming from a DO school. IR is competitive, and I wanted to have the best chance as possible to basically match into IR. And so obviously coming to a rotation, working your butt off, making a really good impression, showing that you're knowledgeable, but also easy to work with was a thing that I really wanted to do. And so I applied to about 15 away rotations, and I ended up with 3 spots. And I selected those institutions based on places that, one, were in the geographic area that I was going to be happy living in. So for me, that was the Northeast. I'm from New York City. And then 2, places, some of the places were places that were like quote unquote DO friendly, which I think is an important consideration if you are coming from a DO school, because obviously not every program is going to be open to that. It's unfortunate, but that's the truth. And then yeah, so like basically like how likely were they going to be to take me, and are they in like a location that I want to be in? And between those 2 things, I kind of just compiled a list of 15 and then sent it out. Maybe David, you want to tell us a little bit about what was your strategy when applying to aways?
So I just wanted to do as many away rotations as possible. PM&R is a really small field, so everyone I met is basically, going to be a colleague for the rest of my life, and it's a very small circle. You're going to see the same people at conferences that you go to all the time. So these connections that you build early on are very important, and you can always use them to, leverage future opportunities. But what I found most important was geography. So I kind of knew in what region I wanted to end up, which was the Northeast. So I started looking at all the programs, and it's good that there aren't that many PM&R programs. So I was able to narrow it down easier, based on where I think I could match, based on where, maybe it's a little bit out of reach, but an away rotation could, maybe put me over the top, and where I thought I was maybe a better candidate then, and I had to do everything just to make sure I secured a spot there and stuff like that. But so I tried to do as many as possible. And in that situation, the biggest prohibitive factor is the financial one. Because if you're traveling a lot and, you have to figure out a place to stay, and that's always extra money. So I tried to do it so that I was doing it in an area where I can crash in like someone's apartment, or I slept in my parents' house, and then I slept in my brother's house and stuff like that. And then I crashed at like a friend's house for a week. So, and another friend's house at a month, God bless him. So if you can figure out stuff like that, definitely do it, because housing can really get expensive, and you don't want that to be the reason you can't do an away rotation. So do everything in your power to figure something out. And if you can't make it happen, that's okay. Don't kill yourself over it. But it's, I've seen colleagues actually swap apartments because one was rotating at that institution, at his institution, and the other one was rotating at the other one's institution. They're like, oh, let's trade homes for a month. It's kind of like a weird reality show, but worked out. So
yeah, I actually think that's a really good point. There is a cost to not only applying through VSLO. That's about like $10 or $15 per site. And there's also obviously the way bigger cost is attending an away rotation at a place that's like truly away from your home city, where you like, need to live somewhere for a month. I went through that also. One of the places that I rotated out was in a different city entirely, and I had to basically, figure out living arrangements, and they can be very expensive, especially if you're going to like a metro area that's really, really expensive to live in, where, you know what I mean? Like you're going to be paying essentially rent or Airbnb or getting a hotel room or figuring something out. So that part is something to be aware of. I don't think it should limit you, obviously, if possible, because like these are like once in a lifetime experiences. So you should try to make it work still. And I think a lot of people do, but it is important to be aware of that cost coming down the pike. And actually, a lot of people, when they take out, and this is like a little bit off topic, but when they take out their loans for their 4th year of medical school, they will account extra money just for ERAS application fees, VSLO application fees, and the away rotation experience itself, which is something just to consider in the back of your head. Ife, did you have any specific things to add about when you were picking aways or doing anything or anything related to applying?
Yeah, interesting fact actually. When I had to apply for aways, was right around when COVID hit, and there was this period when they had a specific rule about how many you could apply to, and how many you can actually match to. So I was constrained to one, and I had to make that one count. And I didn't want to deny or refuse so many others. So I only applied to, I think, 4 or 5. And as soon as I heard back from one that I really wanted to see what it was like, I just, focused on that one because I couldn't really try out any other ones. There's a lot of restrictions, and COVID was really scary, and everyone was still kind of opening things up. But I chose it very strategically. I wanted to see what a true, profound academic institution looked like, because I was actually part of my reasons. A lot of my buddies in general surgery actually ended up just not doing it at all because it was, not very necessarily needed for general surgery. And sometimes it could actually hurt your chances. But I actually wanted to make that life decision of whether I wanted to pursue a community program. For general surgery, it's a big deal. Sometimes these community programs actually, you get hands-on immediately, you're right in the chug and you're operating from day one. And then some academic institutions offer you some other things like, career development, access to research, early career development. So I wanted to see if I truly enjoyed being at a very true academic institution, which, that ended up being what I ended up doing. But choosing it was very straightforward. I just literally, I think I went on Doximity and I just saw where the most like academic institutions were. And then I did my research from there. And I was very happy to master one of the ones that I actually wanted to do. And I ended up getting a lot of my letters from there. So I think there's, so many positives to it. I'm glad I'll do it again, honestly, even as a general surgeon. I highly recommend.
Yeah, absolutely. And so here, you just wanted to kind of highlight, you have all these filters that you can use to basically determine, specialty, institution, location, et cetera. Most of them are going to be 4 weeks, although a lot of them will be 2 weeks as well. Again, this is a slide, kind of a non-specific slide, just showing us that, how the hospitals will be listed. I think the important thing to remember also is that each hospital will have different requirements, right? So all of them are going to want like the same general basic info from you that your school is going to upload, your biographic info, your CV. So definitely make sure you have an up-to-date CV. Some of them will ask for either a letter of recommendation from within the specialty, or they might ask you for a personal statement about why do you want to come to this program, right? So this is not the same as a personal statement that you're going to use for like residency, explaining like why you want to be a radiologist or whatever. It's a statement saying explicitly why are you qualified for, and kind of like why should they take you for the away rotation experience. So I think that that's a really important thing to. I typically advise people to have like some sort of a template ready going into the season, because inevitably, almost always, at least one of the places people apply to is going to ask you for this. So just have something ready, and then actually you can use that as the basis to start brainstorming your personal statement for residency down the road as well. And that statement is probably one of the most important things that they use to select people if they ask for it. So don't sleep on it. Make sure it's good, and make sure you're make sure you're putting your best face and foot forward in that. Again, just kind of wanted to show you a little bit about what the interface looks like. Obviously having, personal information. Here's some of the documents. You're going to have to get an immunization form. So you're going to have to do like a full physical, doctor's visit. I remember having to do that. Not fun, but, you got to do it. Yeah. And then basically, other stuff, just making sure that all of your documents are actually uploaded in this section, and then making sure that your applications are actually tracked. So here, this is obviously someone who hasn't applied yet, but once you start applying to these, this will show up as like the program name. Did they receive all your documents? Did they approve you? Right. And then did you accept the rotation? So just because they approved you, actually, you still have the opportunity at that point to say yes or no. And, we could talk about the implications of saying no, which can be, that can sever your ties with the program, right? So if you're, one of the situations that comes up is, what if I'm offered two offers for the same time slot? What happens then? And, I guess maybe David, what do you say? What do you do in that situation?
So in that situation, you try to make the most of it. You obviously can't do two rotations at the same time. You figure out which program you would rather match at, or what program you would rather experience for whatever reason is important to you. Confirm with that program, secure the rotation, and then reach out to the other program and be like, I'm sorry, I'm unavailable during the slot, but I'm really interested in your program for these reasons. Is it, I have an opening in my like student schedule for the next like 3, 4, 5, 6 slots. I'd love to, see if I can come for even a 2-week rotation. If they offer 4 weeks, you can ask them, can I come in for 2 weeks? You really have to take initiative in that situation and be prepared that they might say no. We can only offer you this slot, take it or leave it. And then, you may have kind of burned a bridge, but in that situation, you have to make the most of it. So pick whichever one you'd rather go to, contact the other one, see if you can, reschedule it, or see if you could be placed on a wait list, because other people get placed in the same situation, slots open up, and they might reach out and be like, hey, we have an opening, you were on the wait list, do you want to attend? And it might be super last minute, but make sure you're being polite, courteous, and respectful, but definitely reach out.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, you have to just know that risk is always going to be there. I did end up canceling on one rotation, full disclosure, and they did not invite me for an interview despite being a DO friendly program. So, they probably took that into consideration. And, you have to think about it from the program's perspective as well. If they're extending you an invite and you say no, I mean, there's a lot of people waiting behind you that are jumping at that opportunity. So that's kind of a sign to them that there's a reason why you're not going. So just keep that in mind when you're making that decision, and be strategic as well. You know what I mean? Be strategic with which place you're actually more qualified for, which place you're more likely to end up at, because those things matter as well. You don't want to just fall for the hype because a place that offers you an away, and then potentially burn a bridge at a place that's a more realistic chance for you to match at for your, wherever you're at academically or specialty wise.
Yeah, you can also, nothing stopping you from doing an away rotation up until like January, because programs still, haven't finalized their rank list by that point. So continue to reach out, follow up, and be like, hey, can I do a rotation at this time, or this time, and stuff like that. Usually programs have opening and they're interested in having students come.
Yeah, that's true. You can rotate.
I think they get money from something for it. Maybe that's why, but either way, they are interested in having students come.
I don't know if they get money for the VSLO students. I think they get money for like the home rotators, like the home programs. I don't think they get money for the VSLOs, but they definitely like having students around. It's free extra set of hands. It's new faces that bring energy to the team. And it's people to meet that, again, like, you never know who might be interested in coming there. So definitely. So enough about that. We kind of talked a little bit about the actual application itself. I want to talk to you guys about the, how to excel in the away. So I think, this is basically, this is what you really want to be thinking about for not only the away rotations, but even if you're a third year right now, rotating on the wards, like this is all very, very relevant advice for, how to just carry yourself to get noticed and to stand out. Obviously, everybody says be the first one in, the last one out. That's very, very important. Especially as a sub-I or, and a visiting student, like you want to show that you're there to work hard. It's not just like kind of a 1 month, vacation from wherever you're from. That's really important. I think the yes man mindset, I feel like that's a very surgical thing. Maybe Ife, you want to talk a little bit about, how you or the students that rotate with you portray the yes man mindset.
Yeah, no, I think one of the things you said about free set of hands, it really is why a lot of programs actually, really like having away rotations or rotators, because I remember several times hearing the phrase, the hardest working people in the hospital are people doing their away internships, right? Because you're there really early. and you're working with the interns, but you're also often in the operating room. But you still have to have a good understanding of what's going on the floor. And being able to juggle both is quite challenging. And that yes man mindset, just being the one who's ready to get things done, having your lists of to do items sorted out, checking in very frequently with the intern and saying, rather than saying, is there anything for me to do, kind of thing, I think more like, hey, I saw this guy needed a JP removed, I'm gonna go do it now. I just want to make sure I'm not double doing what you're doing already. Is there, these are just things I've got down from the chief's list of things that's very important to do. That's kind of what reflects that yes man mindset, more so than anything else. But it's a very tiring, busy. Um, you have to be well rested before and sort out some time to be well rested after. But I think I've heard Dan say this already. It's a day in day out series of interviews, right? So every encounter you have with the attendants, the interns, the residents, even the program coordinator is an interview. So that's that added pressure, and you kind of have to know that's what you're ready to do. It's a great opportunity to really show off all the things you've learned. If you're getting the away at the first place, your scores and everything you have on paper already looks good, right? So it's a good time to just step in. And then even if you don't end up matching there, you get to make impact and connections with the residents and the attendants that can actually help boost your application. So we'll talk more about how to excel on your away rotation. But I think of all the things here on this slide, just being readily available and attentive is so crucial.
Yeah, thank you. I definitely echo all of those pearls. Ian, you want to talk a little bit about either any you could take any of these, but I feel like you want to talk about maybe like how this relates to radiology, or now I know you're doing medicine right now for your intern year, how students can either help with the workflow in the setting where it's not maybe like without explicitly asking, how can they do that and like stand out in those kinds of ways?
Yeah, absolutely. So doing medicine right now, having sub-Is, people from other institutions and our affiliated medical school rotating with us, definitely being able to kind of emulate the intern's workflow on a smaller number of patients and being able to, with kind of minimal supervision, do all the work that an intern does is really kind of like your goal on these sub-internships. Being able to like be really efficient and with just a little bit of help, really reduce the overall burden of the team. And you also have the time to talk to patients, spend extra time on each step because you have a fewer number on your list, and really dedicate yourself to making sure things aren't missed, being really thorough. You should kind of be like practicing like perfect presentation, being trying to do a perfect physical exam, because you actually have the time to do those things that the intern's seeing 3 or 4 times more patients as you aren't really going to have the time to do. So you can really own your skills. But one thing I also want to comment on is, thinking about rotations that I've done like 4th year in radiology as someone in medical school, and then also seeing sub-Is and doing my own like sub-I medicine. The kind of constant thing is a little bit of like personality, agreeableness, being able to gel with the other members of your team, no matter what specialty you're going into. Like in radiology, you can't honestly do that much to impress who you're working with as a 4th year. You just don't know enough about the field, and you really can't do anything to improve the workflow. But you can be easy to get along with. You can be someone who's pleasant to like sit with for a couple of hours. So being on medicine, being in radiology, that's honestly one of the biggest things you can do is be well liked by everyone around you by just being positive, being agreeable, figuring out the team dynamics and learning how to play within them, and not trying to go outside of that too much.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is like, just demonstrating genuine interest and curiosity. I think like no matter how busy I was as an intern or even now, like if somebody asks me a question that shows that they're truly just interested in what I'm doing, I'm going to take time to teach them about that topic, that pathology, or answer them, right? So like that's something that I noticed, like even when I was super stressed carrying tons of patients on during my intern year, and I was like, not, it was just, you're frazzled, you're running all over the place. There's a million things going on. But like, you make that time and then you also, as like as the resident, you then remember that interaction, right? And then you remember that interaction, and guess what? When everyone's face goes up on the screen, when you're rating all the students that have rotated, you're gonna be like, that guy or girl was really cool. Like they asked really good questions, they were really helpful. You remember them as a whole better because of a small interaction. And it goes back to what Ife said earlier, is that you don't know which interaction is going to be like the deal breaker for you, positively or negatively, right? You don't know if you walk in one day with just like looking really down and depressed because of whatever it is, and then that can like actually really rub someone the wrong way. And you don't know when you walk in one day just feeling really positive and just smiling for no reason also, and then you just bring an energy into the room that people like think is infectious, and they're like, wow, like, this is awesome, right? So, try to be that second person in any way you can, and to whoever you can, because truly, I'll speak for my program, but I know this is true at others. The coordinators have a say, the residents have a say, the faculty have a say. It's not just the PD, right? There's like this illusion the PD is like, waves a wand and that's how everything works. It's not how that works, right? The PD, more often than not, doesn't want to make that decision at all. As a matter of fact, they're just gathering feedback from everyone else and they're just kind of stamping it at the end. But really, they're actually just an accumulator of feedback from all of these other kind of sources within the program. And that stems from faculty, chief residents, junior residents, and even ancillary staff, right? Even nurses and techs, right? Especially on IR, or surgery, where you're working with other staff very, very intimately, and like they're part of like the department. Making impressions on those people actually can go a long way as well. And they can actually teach you much more than a busy junior resident can a lot of the time, because they have way more experience too. I think another thing that I love to tell students as a pearl of advice, definitely set aside a time to meet with the program director. I think it's like, to me, it kind of came pretty naturally. Like I was like, if I'm already here, I may as well meet the person who is like in charge of this program and like just spend 10 minutes with them. You're not necessarily always going to be assigned to rotation with them. You're not necessarily going to be assigned to meet with them at all. So it's kind of the onus falls on you to take that initiative, find some time during lunch or after work or early or whatever, whenever you have downtime, and set up a meeting. Even if it's 10 minutes, just check in with them, ask them for feedback. If they've heard anything, ask them about, ask them about like what they're looking for and how you feel like you've been doing so far and what you could do better. And then honestly, ask them to meet again at the end of the rotation. And that's actually a good opportunity then to not only get feedback about yourself, get a gauge of like, how do they feel about you, which is very valuable, but also ask for a letter of recommendation too. And that I think is, if you're going on an away rotation, you should definitely try to get a letter, especially if you're rotating in the summer months before you submit your application. So I think that's really important as well. David, did you do research at all for many of your aways? Did you get involved with any projects?
I wouldn't say they were like intense, research projects.
Like case reports maybe or something like that?
Yeah, they were absolutely. I got in a couple of posters for conferences just by like reaching out to the residents that I was, rotating with, because they all have to do these requirements. And trust me, they would love a med student to take up, this task off their hands. They were ecstatic. And they're like, why? So I just took as many as I possibly could, typed up whatever nonsense they had me to do, and they might not even remember it, but it's on my resume and it's, it was on my application, and, it was a cool experience getting to go to the conference and obviously meeting people like that. But it was just an easy opportunity to meet a lot of really cool people. And going back to what Dan said, I agree about reaching out to meet with the PD. I think all but one of my audition rotations, I was able to meet with the PD. And it was usually, the way I did it was, after my first week of the rotation, I would email the PD and, CC the coordinator and introduce myself, be like, I'm currently rotating. I'd love to meet with you, for these reasons, what's your availability? And I was usually able to do it. And then about the letter thing, I absolutely agree. It's a great opportunity to get a letter of rec, especially obviously before you submit ERAS. But what I found was really beneficial was, if I was going to work with someone for an extended period of time, maybe like I was with them for a week, I would kind of ask them, halfway during the time, and be like, hey, is it cool if I ask you for a letter at the end of our rotation, so that they know, that they'll look at you differently. You know, they might actually try to evaluate you and give you advice, and might actually give you a really good letter, because in a lot of small fields, people really care about those letters. You know, they're seeing letters from their colleagues and like, oh, this guy vouches for this person. Let's go. I want him. So it can really help your letter instead of it being a generic one. If the letter writer knows ahead of time that he's going to write you a letter, she's going to write you a letter, it can really make the letter that much more better.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Sometimes giving them the heads up that you know, like, again, like kind of giving them a heads up to be on the lookout to evaluate you can make them, it can change how they're perceiving you, because now that you're not just like, oh, you're just another student, you know, rotating through the service, but now you're actually, you know, now you're actually someone that, like, you know, needs, you know, is really interested not only in the field, but also in, you know, in getting support from this person, so they kind of treat you better. So I echo that. And then the last thing I was going to say with research, I think, you know, getting involved with research is really, you know, it's a hit or miss. You know, some residents will have, some residents and programs will have things for you to do, some won't. Either way, it's really valuable, because one, if you do end up doing a poster or publication, that's actually a talking point. When you go on the interview later, that's a talking point to say, hey, I did research here, or like it's on your CV. And then the people interviewing you're like, oh, you did research with our residents. Like, how was that? Tell me about that. It becomes an organic conversation point that you can then leverage to your advantage. So just keep that in mind as well. It's also a very good way to keep in contact with the program long after you leave, because you have to revise the manuscript, you got to submit it, you can update them that it got accepted somewhere, you can ask them to hang out at the conference, right? It's all of these extra ways to just like make your name continuously relevant amongst, and not forgotten. Not that you just came and left and, like, you know, people were like, all right, you know, who was that again? You know, now you're like, you're constantly coming up. And then when rank lists come due, you're like the person that they think about, because you've been relevant the whole time. And that's a really good segue into kind of one of our last slides, right? So, you know, the way rotation is the interview. We kind of talked about this, right? You know, the interviews that I had after my aways were essentially just a formality, right? Like, everybody knew, like, they already worked with me for a month. There was no, like, nobody was sitting here like asking me, like, everybody knew me. Everybody was just like touching base, like, hey, how's everything been going? You know, hopefully you're well rested. You still want to do this. You know, you didn't change your mind. Like, it was very like casual. You know what I mean? It's not like the interviews at the places that are meeting you for the first time. So keep that in mind. Don't wait for the interview to try to impress. The away rotation is a time to perform and the time to, like, work your hardest. You know, obviously letters of rec, we already touched upon. Continuity through research, we already touched upon. Discussion of the experience on the interview day, we already touched upon. But I think one thing I'll add to that is, you know, if you had a really positive experience, be forthcoming about it. You know, there's nothing wrong with having a PD sitting across from you, whether it's in person or over Zoom, and you telling them, hey, this was the best rotation of my life. You know, I loved every minute of being here, and I love the culture. I love the procedures you do, or the workflow, or the team, and I want to come here. My family lives here, or whatever other reason. Just being like really open and honest about that. I think people are shy away from that. They think it might not be appropriate. There's nothing wrong with that. That's truly how you feel. Now, don't go around telling that to 5 different programs, because you don't want to get caught in a lie like that. Because, again, especially in the smaller fields, people will talk about the different applicants. But if it's your top choice, or if it's a program that you're like really into, make it known. You know, make it known, and it'll make them also rank you differently, because a lot of times those rankings go in that day, right? So if you're sending a letter of intent later, yeah, sure, it can help, but the ranking that you want them to come away from that day saying, there's 10 people that interviewed today, but this is the person that was really obsessed with us, and they rotated here, and we love them. They won today, right? Out of these 10 people, this person definitely won. And then the last thing is mentorship, right? So, like, I think we talked about this, you know, even if you don't match at the away, even if you don't end up there, you have people now that have seen you work hard, have seen your enthusiasm. And now, even if you don't end up at that place, you might be able to tap them to pick up the phone or write an email and advocate on your behalf at another institution. So keep that in mind too. Those kinds of phone calls, those backdoor kind of conversations that happen. I've seen applicants get into programs because of those. You know, I've seen people get into places that, you know, were above their, you know, anticipated competitiveness level because people vouched for them. So don't sleep on tapping in your mentors, whether it's from away rotations, whether it's from research experiences, or wherever they're from, right? Any physician mentor is valuable to advocate on your behalf. I know we're going to jump into Q&A in a second, but I also wanted to ask the panel if they had anything to add before we start asking people from the chat, people to start dropping questions in the chat.
Yeah, I have a very quick bonus tip for folks joining today that are interested in general surgery. So when you apply, VSLO to general surgery, you get asked to rank your list of preferences and what rotation you want to do. So there's colorectal, vascular, ACS, SICU. One of my biggest insights is to stay away from ACS and SICU. The reason is because these services have rotating attendings, right? So they usually have the attending of the day or the attending of the week. And if you're there for 4 weeks, that's not enough time to do a deep connection, right? So you want to rank colorectal, like cases, case-based specialties where you can read about the cases ahead of time and show up to the operating room prepared. So that's just one of the, like a nice tip that I like to give, and just so you guys have that in the back of your pockets as you think about your rotation.
Amazing. Yes, thank you. Thank you for that. I think it's important. And I think the takeaway from here, by the way, as we jump into, I just wanted to share a little bit about who we are and what we do, and then we'll let you guys drop some questions in the chat. I think a takeaway from that last point is just how nuanced each specialty is, right? Every specialty comes with its own set of challenges, its own kind of personalities, its own way to like navigate the process of applying and matching, and its own way to just be competitive and good at, as a student and as an applicant. And so obviously that's kind of the purpose of our platform. Our platform is to help students kind of niche down and focus on how to stand out and do really well in this process by working with residents like us and on all other phenomenal members of our team, only in a specialty specific and longitudinal fashion. And so, we help students with everything you see on the screen, whether it's preparing for an exam, preparing for applications, interviews, personal statements, it doesn't matter. We're here to help you and make sure that you have a resource in your corner, people who have been successful, but are not just have been successful in their own journey, but also have experience working with students and also just very excited and enthusiastic to help. So, you can reach out to us anytime. I definitely wanted to also extend everyone a discount for any of our services. If you do end up wanting to work with us, you can scan this QR code to fill out a free consultation, use that code, and we're more than happy to offer you 15% off on any of our services because you guys devoted some time and attention to us, and we want to give that back to you as a big thank you. Yeah, and I'll leave that up on the screen, but also I think, we should give everyone an opportunity. The chat's open, so feel free to write any questions that you had about anything, whether it's was covered today or whether it's just a question that you had on your mind about anything related to medical school, residency, aways, whatever it is. You have us, I don't want to keep the panel too late. They've already volunteered their time today, so we're very grateful and appreciative for that. So feel free to drop any questions. All right, let's see. We do have one. How do you arrange the timing of aways per time slot? How many do you apply to? Great question. We actually were supposed to talk about this, so thank you for the reminder. So the timing is interesting because it's not always going to work out. It's not always going to overlap with the timing that your school gives you for each month or slot. Typically I was applying to like 3 to 4 per slot. And I was always trying and aiming for the earlier months because that's when you're able to get a letter of rec for that you can still submit into ERAS. So really like my ideal timing was like July through October. And I was trying to apply to like 4 different institutions for each one of those. I don't know if anyone has anything to add to that that's different, but maybe if not, we could go to the next one. For Faye, sorry. Program only allows us 3 sub-Is, but subspecialties don't apply to this rule. Do you think it would be a downfall to apply to Gen Surg to do a sub-I in Ped Surg or other surgical subspecialties? What do you think about that, Faye? It's a good question.
That's a great question. The pediatric surgery is just, there's all these subspecialties that all make up general surgery. It's really hard to, general surgery has become more of like a very series. Like the true general surgeons that are left doing general surgery, I'll say trauma. And I usually try to steer people away. Even if you're interested in trauma, I try to steer people away from doing any sub-I related thing. There's, trauma ACS field. But pediatric surgery is a great field. They are very, very small, minute amounts of pediatric surgeons, and they virtually all know each other. So if one has your back, it just trickles down to most of the other programs. So I think I'm not really sure why your school limits you to just three. But if they're limited to three, then I would think about pediatric surgery. A really good one that I actually did is surgical oncology. They have a very good network as well. A lot of them train in the same places like MD Anderson or MSK. So they were either fellows together or they're residents together at some point. And maybe colorectal surgery or vascular surgery. Vascular surgeons are more broad and really kind of work alongside with the trauma surgeons. So there's a lot of overlap there. But if your school really only lets you to do three, then I'll just go ahead and do those three. And if you, I think three is more than enough. If you show up and really work hard, especially in these summer months, get your research in, get your letters. That should be more than enough. But yeah, I think that should work out just fine.
Yeah, exactly. For Comlex, definitely try to take it in May or June and start aways in July, if possible. Just a quick and short answer for that one. Rotating earlier is always better because, again, you can get letters kind of like we talked about. If you rotate later, you're kind of just rotating for that one institution, and you're not really able to get letters that then can translate and advocate for you for other institutions that you're applying for. So I guess that would be my thing. Delwyn asked about PM&R. Away rotations for prelim or transitional year. So actually me, David, and Ian all had to do a separate application, right, for the intern year because radiology, IR, and PM&R all have to deal with that. You don't have to do aways for those. You just have to apply. TYs are really competitive. Prelim medicines less so. Basically, you just apply and see what happens. Usually that's kind of more about like who the program and regional preference more than anything else. But yeah, I'll kind of leave it at that. It's kind of a whole can of worms in and of itself that I don't know if we'll get into, but something important to maybe cover in a future post, blog post or Twitter post. So we'll keep that in mind, and we'll put that up somewhere. Let's see, what else do we have? We have kind of want to cover at least a couple more of these. International schools don't have VSLO. Yes, that's true. So this is actually a good point. If you don't have access to VSLO or the program that you want to rotate is just not using VSLO, just reach out to them directly, right? Send an email to the coordinator and just ask them, do they have availability to take on a student from a DO or an IMG school or wherever you're from? And, you might have to send 20 or 30 emails, because they may say no, but then one of them will say yes, and that'll be your in for that institution. So kind of taking that initiative falls on you. Obviously, using VSLO is way easier than cold emailing a bunch of places, but that's kind of the recommendation if either the school's not there or you're not able to apply through VSLO, which I know is unfortunate that you can't use that if you're like an IMG from the Caribbean or otherwise.
I've interacted, Dan, with some IMGs. If you're going to be emailing, you have to start doing it like now because that all the requests are like filled up by now. Some people have applied like a year in advance, 2 years in advance. So for the IMGs and our audiences, then if you're thinking about doing VSLO or you're an IMG, or if you're thinking about doing an away rotation when you're in the Caribbean, you should start working on those like now, reaching out to those program directors ahead of time.
Exactly. Starting early always helps, right? Showing initiative early. I mean, I was emailing my coordinator at the place that I rotated at and then ended up matching at probably from like October already. Like as a third year in October, I was basically checking in with her like once every month saying, hey, just wanted to make sure there weren't any updates. And guess what? I got the first slot, right? The second they opened, the first slot in June, she was like, I know you've been asking all year, so here you go. And you better take it. You know what I mean? Like at that point, you better take that rotation if they give it to you, if you've been, bothering them, or not bothering them, but, showing interest, let's say. So yeah, definitely, and then that also brings in another thing. Don't be like overzealous, right? Don't send like a million emails a week, right? I think, having a reasonable periodic check-in is fine. but more than, bothering a program coordinator more than like once every few weeks or a month is probably overkill. You don't want to be perceived as like annoying, so keep that in mind too. And keep the emails like short and sweet, and always attach your CV. Have your headshot linked to your Gmail account, things like that, like can make you just like look more professional, more put together, put a face to a name. Like, it's like small things like that that really can go a long way, actually. I think we covered all the questions. I don't know if anyone's got anything else.
Just one question here. I'm saying that only electives that are open right now are March and April of this year, but those are still for like the current fourth years. The slots in July, October 2024 will open up, within the next couple months. So those are the slots that you see that are open now are for the current, fourth years, because they still have to fill up their schedules with something, even though, at that point they're already going to match. But
yeah, exactly. I think that's really important. Like, that's why we're doing this webinar now, is because like this is going to happen. This is all going to be stuff that's going to happen like soon, like very soon. The programs are going to start opening their slots for you guys who are current MS3s, right? So whatever's on there now is probably not, most of it is probably not relevant or there for you yet. So it's there for you to just get an idea of what programs might want, might need, etc., but not necessarily for you to apply to yet. Right. So don't worry about that just yet. IMG attending for IM, year between the match. How do you arrange to get LOR uploaded to ERS a year after your rotation? Yeah. So, I mean, ideally you get the letter when you're rotating. So you don't, you get the letter, have them like either send it to you or just ensure that it's been written so that they're not trying to remember how you did a year later, because it's not possible. It's just like there's no way that's going to be accurate. Now, can it still be a strong letter? Sure, if the person really cares to make a good impression on your behalf, of course they can make it strong. But, if you have like no personal connection to these people and you're just straight up relying on them to write you a strong letter, I would try your best to have that letter locked in, done in advance, so that when the time comes, all you got to do is send them a quick link and they can just upload it, but it's already been written from when you were actually fresh in their head. Ian, reposting a question. Okay, so let's see. Ton of sites. You don't want to basically considering applying to more. I would rather you just apply. It's tough. My take on this is that I would rather you just apply to all of them in the beginning and then, just apply to them and then see what happens, because it's not like you're going to get like most people don't get even close to like a fraction of how many they apply to, right? At least that was my experience. Again, I got 4 total out of like 15 to 20, and I had connections at 2 of those places. You know what I mean? So like, I don't really think your likelihood of getting them, it's not like you apply and you get it because there's like 100+ people applying, and you know what I mean? Like for the same spots as you, right? And a lot of them are going to be really qualified and have connections and whatever. So like that makes things tough to get. And so I think it's better to overshoot than to apply late, is my bottom line. I think applying late is almost always going to be a surefire way to not get anything, versus overshooting it. Like, yeah, you may get 2 and then you may have to burn a bridge, but also you may not get either, or you may only get 1. And at least you're early, and at least you're at the top of the stack for people showing interest. Probably leave it at that. I know we're running on the hours. So I think we'll take this one last question from Nicole and then we'll call it. So 2 to 3 slots, any strategy to stagger the date? Or is it actually that random? Not really. I mean, it's really on program availability, specialty, hospital, how many people apply. There's no real strategy. I would just apply to like multiple sites per month. Ife and David, did you guys do that? You guys applied to like multiple sites for each month, right?
Yeah, and then I reached out and they were like, we're not available. But I reached out directly via email a lot of times because they're like, oh, we're not available for this slot. Just apply to this slot on VSLO and we'll get you in for this slot. So they specifically told me which slot to apply for. But it's reach out. You never know. A lot of these programs prioritize their home students first. So depending on how that schedule goes, they might usually be rotating in like May or June before an away student can get there. So it's really random, you know, just be courteous and polite and reach out.
Exactly. All right, guys, thank you so much. I want to be respectful of our panel's time. So I thank you guys for your questions, for your time, for your attention. You could definitely fill out the form if you want to chat with any of us, a free consultation about anything related to residency, or, you know, what you're kind of have anything you want support with. We're happy to help in any way we can. So reach out to us, and otherwise stay tuned. Follow us on social media for the next one. Okay. Thank you, David, Ian, and Ife, for your time and for your pearls. Appreciate you guys.